So thank you for inviting me to speak at the afternoon. My name is Dr. Ravindhi Murphy. I work half the time as an NHS oncologist in Southwest London, and the other half of my work is with Cancer Research UK at the Centre for Drug Development. And I'm really pleased to be able to share with you the Determine trial. So the full name of the trial is Determining Extended Therapeutic Indications for Existing Drugs in Rare Molecularly Defined Indications Using a National Evaluation Platform Trial. It's not that catchy. So what I'd like to do is sort of unpick what that means. So let's go a step back. What's the way that we traditionally treat cancers? And that's really by tumor type historically. So people will come into the clinic with a lung cancer, that's a common cancer, and we have a huge body of clinical evidence from clinical trials to let us know what to prescribe and what those benefits may be. That works really well for common cancers, not so well for rare tumors. Science has advanced over the last decades, and now, as well as cytotoxic drugs, we have targeted agents. So we know some of the genetic drivers of certain cancers, and drugs have been designed specifically to action those mutations. Those drugs then become licensed in particular tumor types by and large. So we have a body of drugs that are very specific, that have safety data and efficacy data and are licensed, but only in very specific indications. So what is the purpose of the Determine trial? The purpose of the Determine trial is to try and find out whether these targeted agents could have use in patients with rare cancers that crucially have actionable genomic alterations. So we refer to it as a umbrella basket platform trial, and I'll unpick that later in the talk. So we are looking at patients with adults, teenagers and pediatrics, so all ages, and they have to have an actionable genomic alteration for which we have a licensed drug already for. What are the big aims of the trial? So if we can show that these actionable drugs work in these rare cancers, and they can be any type of cancer, particularly rare tumors, then these drugs will be put onto the Cancer Drugs Fund so that they can be funded for a period of time and then go to NICE for evaluation. What do I mean by rare cancers? So there's two types of rare cancers that we're addressing in this study. So rare cancers by incidence. Do they commonly occur? And we've set generally less than 6 people per 100,000 for a rare cancer. But we might get people with commonly occurring cancers, so breast cancer, lung cancer, bowel cancer, that have a very rare alteration. So if you are someone with a lung cancer, and we do your screening and you have a mutation that happens in a different cancer for which there is a targeted drug, you would be eligible for this study. So it actually treats a big population. The second aim of the trial is actually very important as well, and it's to build this translational package around our findings. So if we see activity in a certain area, what is driving that activity? Can we select patients better, and will it inform our clinical practice later? So that's another key part of the trial. So it's a very large study because it's children, it's teenagers, it's adults, and it's a big range of drugs. So it's got quite a complicated trial design. So here we have it simplified. So you're the patient, you could be 2 years old, 12 years old, or 52 years old, and you will come into the study. Patients are recruited through national genomic screening programs, and then what happens is we get all the data, and a molecular tumor board will assess what mutation there is and see if we can assign them to a trial arm. So we have commercial partners, pharmaceutical companies that have agreements with us, and they've given us targeted drugs that we can use as part of this trial. The patients then go into different cohorts. They're enrolled based on the mutation that they have and there being a drug available for it. And then they are treated with that drug and have specified assessments and monitored to see how they respond to the drug and if there's any benefit. And they're followed up for a maximum of 2 years. And the hope is that if there is efficacy with these drugs, then they get approved by the Cancer Drugs Fund. And Cancer Research UK have been in a very ongoing and open dialogue with the CDF to try and streamline this process. So a little bit more about patient recruitment. a lot of oncology trials have a big attrition rates because we are testing for very specific mutations, and these are rare cancers. So Determine is going to recruit patients through national screening programs, which means everyone in the country has access to this in theory. So there's the NHS Genomic Medicine Service, Target National, which is being run at all the ECMCs, so the experimental centres for oncology, SMPs for pediatric patients, and then other screening programs. So what I mean by other screening programs is there's a specific screening program called Imagine in Scotland, but then also commercial trials. So a lot of our patients in oncology may have had some tumour sequencing already as part of other studies, and we can still use that information. It's very valuable to us. It can be assessed by the Molecular Tumour Board and see if we've got anything else that we can offer them as part of this trial. And I think this will help streamline the patients and get them recruited into the trial a bit more quickly. So what do I mean by an umbrella basket design? So we have a master protocol for Determine, and this encompasses every single part of the trial. And as we have new drugs added into the protocol, we do substantial amendments to account for them, and we stratify the patients into different treatment cohorts. So each cohort will be a maximum of 30 patients, and these are called the baskets. So the umbrella is the master protocol, and the baskets are for each arm of the trial. I think I'll show that better on the next slide. So here's the umbrella, here are the patients, and here are some of the drugs that we have already ready to go for when the trial opens later this month. So ALK positive, lung cancers commonly have ALK mutations. We have several different ALK mutation directed drugs, but alectinib is the one that's been approved for this trial. We have an immunotherapy arm for patients with high tumour mutational burdens or microsatellite instability or mismatch repair deficiencies, which we'd be able to commonly test. ROS1 common in lung cancers, HER2 common in breast cancers and upper GI cancers, BRAF very common in melanomas and lower GI cancers. And these are all drugs that have been in extensive trials, have been approved for specific tumour indications. So here we go. And they all end up in these baskets. So what's really interesting about this trial is that it's been designed in a way to recruit patients quickly and also to answer the question quickly. So we don't want, these are rare cancers, it's very hard to recruit them in a timely manner. So we've designed the trial to be able to answer the question in the most efficient way possible. So there will be interim analyses at set points. So for example, at 10 patients is the first analysis. If we see a response in one or more patients after 10 have been recruited, the trial will continue. And there are interim analyses, and the final analysis is when there's 30 patients. If we see evidence of efficacy in 6 patients, then that drug will be submitted to the Cancer Drugs Fund. How do we decide if the drugs are working or not? There's 2 primary endpoints. The first one is the objective response, and the second is durable clinical benefit. And we assess these at various time points, but 24 weeks is the agreed timeframe that the Cancer Drugs Fund and we have decided for these patients. So as I mentioned, there's a bespoke route to approval for these drugs. And I think this is really important because what we want to do is if we can see efficacy and benefit in these drugs, we want to get them to patients. So the traditional pathway you'll see on the left is where you have to recruit a large number of patients, and it's just not possible to do that in a national study quickly enough. So that you'd have an early phase trial, 1B or 2, and a randomized control trial, and then move to a phase 3, then submit to NICE, which would either lead to a full approval or a CDF approval or a rejection, and then a re-evaluation later. So as part of the Determine trial, at a stage where 30 patients are recruited into an arm and there's a benefit, we can potentially get approval from the CDF, and then real world data will be collected from patients then who receive the drug through the CDF, and then there's eventually will be a NICE submission process. So I mentioned the translational studies that we'll be doing as part of this work. So in addition to the clinical trial data, the patients will be giving biopsy samples and blood samples, and these will be used for whole genome sequencing and transcriptome sequencing, circulating tumour DNA analysis, and particularly for our immunotherapy arm, looking at the immune landscape of the tumour, looking for the changes in the tumour microenvironment that occur and what is driving those responses, how that affects people's prognosis and their response and who else may benefit from these drugs. What are the benefits of Determine? Well, traditionally for rare cancers, if we thought there might be a drug that would be helpful, we could make a compassionate access request to drug companies to get access to the drug. And what this will do for the drug companies is give them a streamlined way of getting access for patients who would traditionally have had compassionate use requests. And it's a way of getting access, but also looking at the outcome. Are these drugs actually benefiting people? Because most oncology drugs have a lot of side effects. So we really want to ensure that there's a benefit here for the patients who are going to come into hospital, take up their time and get the side effects and hopefully get some benefit. We think it's an efficient and lower cost method of getting good, robust clinical data with smaller patient cohorts, but also having that real statistical analysis to be able to work out if this is a true response. We allow this trial provides access to a novel route of CDF approval, and there's the transitional data package that will help us unpick why these patients may have these responses. So who is delivering this trial? This is a national trial, and we have people up and down the country who are helping with this. So the chief investigator is Matt Krebs, who's based at Manchester at the Christie. There's Linley Marshall, who's the paediatric lead at the Marsden in London. Professor Gary Middleton, who's the translational lead in Birmingham. Professor Cindy Billingham, who's the statistics lead. Dr. Chaturvedi, who's the pathologist. And then we also have patient representatives, so Ms. Gath and Mr. Birchall. And we welcome interest from patient groups as well. A little bit about the Centre for Drug Development at Cancer Research UK. This is not what we usually do. We normally try and find new drugs, but actually this trial is so exciting for us because there are a wealth of targeted drugs that may help people. So that's why we became interested in this trial, even though it's not usually what we deliver. We've previously helped deliver trials for drugs that we now use in clinic routinely, like abiraterone and rucaparib and temozolomide. There are cancer centres, experimental cancer medicine centres up and down the country where patients will go and present and have access to being recruited onto these trials. So this slide is just to highlight that they're spread across the country and this is a national study. And just a quick slide because I'm going to run out of time. This is a great trial because it's for rare cancers, it's a national study, and it's going to hopefully answer the questions quite quickly. Other people have thought of this, and we're in touch with them. So the biggest other trial is DRUP, which is run in the Netherlands. And we've been in open dialogue with them about what they're aiming to do, which drugs they have, and how we might work together on some of the translational work and the data sharing around this trial, because these are rare cancers. If we see a response in one patient, they see a response in one patient and others do, can we somehow get that information together and share that and build up something that's more significant? And the other big one is NCI Match, which is in the USA. Which has been recruiting for a long time, but harder to recruit to because of the different health system they have compared to the good old NHS. So just in summary, this is the first UK national precision medicine trial in rare cancers. It's got a Bayesian adaptive design to allow the good statistical analysis of this trial in small patient cohorts. We're going to recruit through the existing genomic screening programs in the country, and we have a potentially novel approval route via the NHS Cancer Drugs Fund. So if you have a look on our website, that would be great if you're interested, and I'd be delighted to take any questions.